your employees are actually the best adverts you can ever have for a business, and your clients are just walking, talking adverts. If you do well, and you don't have to pay for them, which is even better, and they give you referrals, which means you don't have to pay for what people consider proper marketing.
My name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. But there's a little bit of something for everyone, as we cover a whole host of marketing topics. I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch, we'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn. The link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. One of the old classics, SWOT, is widely known and used across a lot of disciplines. But do you know about TOWS? TOWS. This is the part that adds value to any SWOT, and we'll be discussing this later. But first, let's meet Emma-Louise Munro Wilson, content strategist, revenue growth consultant, and CEO of EMARI Group. Emma is all about generating new sales, shortening sales cycles, and making repeat sales easier. And who doesn't want that? Emma's mantra is a focus on turning existing customers and employees into engaged brand ambassadors. And again, who doesn't want that? Just one career highlight is reducing marketing spend for a client by 90%, yet seeing a 43% increase after just 6 months. Wow. But what I really want to know, and this is the first time we've ever had the same question twice on this podcast, is Emma, can you say the alphabet backwards and no cheating?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. ZYXWVUTSRQPONMLKJIHGFEDCBA.
I've got no idea whether you got that right or not because you said it that fast, so round of applause anyway. But, yeah, fair play.
Use the skill.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna have to phone you up when, like, Saturday night or something, when you've had a glass of wine, and then ask you to do that as well.
Yeah, it's definitely the way I know to take the wine away from me, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it.
Of a drunkenness, then it deteriorates into salsa dancing, Italian opera singing. So, yes.
Oh, we've got into so much detail already. This is brilliant. Love it. Okay, let's get a bit more serious now, but not too serious. What's the story that's brought you to this stage of your career as CEO at EMARI Group Limited?
Okay. Well, I think in a word, it's probably necessity, actually. So I left a role that I wasn't enjoying. Well, actually, no, I loved the role, but the company wasn't quite right for me.
Okay.
And I just spent all my savings on my wedding and then still had bills to pay. So that's how EMARI started, really. If you're talking about, what led me to a career in marketing, I'd probably have to go back to when I was 13 and nearly died of meningitis, actually. Wow. I think.
Eesh.
Yeah. So yeah, you wanted to get serious, so there we go.
And how did that affect you going forward then?
Well, I did a lot of reading because there's not a lot else that you can do when you're stuck in a hospital bed for that length of time. I was in hospital for nearly a year, actually. I kept getting lots of different infections because my immune system was failing. And I got really into looking at the meaning of life and purpose and value. And that really led me into classical philosophy, which is what I then ended up doing my 2 degrees in at university. And it was actually Aristotle, I think, who said that the art of, I'm going to completely muck this up in terms of quotes, But basically, it was the art of persuasion is the key to unlocking human potential and happiness fundamentally, and that really excited me, and I think that naturally led me to a career in communications. So from 2 degrees in theology, ancient rhetoric and philosophy in the 5th century, I then went to oil and gas because that made total sense at the time.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I was thinking, oil and gas.
It's a natural leap. So I started off in BP. I did a variety of retail roles across the UK. Then I went into strategic transformation, which is a posh way of saying I went around fixing problems for people and getting people to each other properly, which was still comms. It was still interesting. And then I ran with a team of 3 of us. We managed the social media globally for BP. So I was looking after Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, and had sort of 3 million people that were listening to us, which was quite exciting.
Yeah.
But it had a massive toll on my relationship with my then boyfriend, now husband. And at some point I realised that nobody puts she was a good employee on their tombstone. So I decided to leave, and we moved to Portsmouth, and I got a job at a tech startup. So I did that for a bit. Then I went into furniture because that was another natural leap. So I went and worked for a company that had 3 brands. They had 2 very strong developed brands, and one that they were launching, which was quite exciting. And then 6 months later, I thought, no, I can't be doing with this. Actually, it's not the right fit culturally. There was a particular individual I just couldn't get on with, and it got to a point where Monday morning I was getting that really Monday morning blues, and walked out after 6 months, and then thought, oh God, what am I going to do now? Because I don't want to spend all my savings. So I drank some wine and sent out 15 emails, got 12 responses, and EMARI started the next day.
Wow, that's cool.
There you go.
Love it.
Long story, short question. Sorry.
No, that's absolutely perfect, and it's just great to show that adversity, changes in maybe not career but organizations, and finding that perfect fit is just as important as doing something that you actually enjoy as well.
Yes, well, the problem was I didn't fit anywhere, so I had to create the environment I wanted to be in. I think fundamentally. But yeah, well.
Okay, so CEO of a company now that focuses heavily on marketing and strategic thinking, and we'll get on to a little bit more about your philosophy for that later on. But can you just explain from a CEO perspective, if you like, why marketing is so important?
Why marketing is so important? Well, it's not in terms of business success. It's not important. It is the business. I mean, everything really depends on it. If you don't have any sales, you don't have a company really. So I think the problem with marketing is that people say it's a lot of things. Like if I said to you, what is marketing? What would you say?
Okay, I'm asking the questions here. Come on. No. In all.
Everyone's got a different answer, and I find it fascinating to see what they say.
Okay, sure. My answer, because I thought I started Marketing Study Lab a couple of years ago, and I've thought about this, and I'll probably get this wrong, but in my head, marketing is highlighting the best solution for a particular problem for your target market. Simple as that.
Oh, that is very simple. Yeah, I like that. So most people talk about, social media. They talk about website design and advertising and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I like yours. I make it a bit more basic than that, and I go with it's communicating your value to people who can buy from you. So that's our little definition. It took me a very long time to come up with that.
I like to think that we got there together. So I kind of started the ball rolling, and then you just finished that out. I like the way this is working here.
But I think why is marketing important? It's building relationships with people, and it's remembering that those relationships drive revenue. We talk a lot about social capital with our clients. So there's always people manage their financial capital, they manage their inventory, their physical capital, and they manage their human capital, the people they've got in their business and the resources they've got. But very rarely do we actually manage and measure our relationships effectively. And not many people that I've found have actually got a very good relationship strategy for people that work with them in the business, and people that buy from that business, and also people that might buy. And that's for me why marketing is important. Your employees are actually the best adverts you can ever have for a business, and your clients are just walking, talking adverts. If you do well, and you don't have to pay for them, which is even better, and they give referrals, which means you don't have to pay for what people consider proper marketing.
Yeah. It's so easy to forget the internal comms or what those people can do as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think marketing is everybody on the same page, communicating your value in the right way to the right people. I don't know if that helps or if that's the answer you were looking for. But that's
of course, there's no wrong answers. On this podcast, there are no wrong answers. People might tell you there are wrong answers, but there are no wrong answers.
It's about the debate. That's always good. I like that. I like a bit of dialogue.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, this is interesting then, because I just want to move on to a slightly different point. You're a big advocate for internal employees being walking, talking billboards and the best proponent for that company if you employ the right people and you've got the right culture. But on your website, you state that EMARI can become your outsourced marketing department. So what are the benefits of outsourcing marketing then?
So I actually went to a couple of clients on this because always go to the hand that feeds you, and they said basically what outsourced marketing does is it saves you time and money, obviously, but it gives you access to expertise that you couldn't otherwise afford. So I actually wrote down a quote on this because I'm going to use it somewhere. I don't know when, but one of my clients said, "Why would I pay someone else 24 grand a year who I have to train, develop, manage, buy equipment for, pay expenses for, just pay you and get better results quicker?" And I was like, I like that.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's what it is. I think sophisticated, strategic marketing. It's not magic. It doesn't just appear out of thin air. It's not just a skill. It requires finesse. Actually, I think more than anything. You've got to use the left side and the right side of your brain. You've got to understand critical thinking, and you've got. I think most good marketers, outsourced marketers, we're consuming more content in a day than most people consume in a year. I mean, I am definitely the person people call to go on pub quizzes most of the time. But that's really helpful because actually I've got so much knowledge from so many different industries and so many different disciplines and different sizes of businesses as well, because I work with everything from a small startup all the way up to FTSE 100s, and it means that I can connect dots and see opportunities and trends and information, just the way information works in a slightly different way to people who might be in the same role every day, day in, day out. But that's not to say that there isn't a benefit to having an in-house marketing, because obviously they are there day in, day out, which I'm not. And so I always say that if we're going to work with you as an outsourced marketing department, then we have to be integral to the organisation that we're working with. It's not just someone you leave out on an outpost and they're just posting out on social media occasionally or reporting on stuff that doesn't actually matter to the business. All of the clients that I've got who use me and use EMARI in that capacity, I've got them all on WhatsApp. We have regular check-ins every week with the sales team. You need that feedback, and you need to understand what's working and what's not if you're really going to make a difference to the business. And actually, although we're outsourced, i.e., we don't have a paycheck at the end of the month, we're actually really I always feel part of the business. The language I use is always, we're doing this and we're looking at that. And I never feel as a consultant or an outsourcer, I always feel part of the business that I'm working with. And I'm very clear on that right from the start, that it has to work like that. Otherwise it won't work.
Yeah, sure. It leads me nicely on to my next question, really, because we've heard this a lot on this podcast, that you need to put customers at the heart of what you do. Massive proponent for that. If you're in marketing, I think you're mad if you don't think that. But what we haven't looked at yet is the actual how we do this. Can you talk us through this, and hopefully you've got some examples to highlight that point?
So I think putting customers at the heart of what we do is a lovely buzz phrase, but not, customer is king and all of those. But really, I think it's about really listening to your customers, and I think it's really appreciating and understanding feedback. And I always go on about feedback with my clients all of the time, and I'm always thinking about my clients, not in a weird way, but just in a kind of, so I'll see something and think, oh, Brian will like that, or James will like that, or Jenny or whatever. And so for me, it's about really listening to your customers and taking their advice and their ideas and different things on board. So we check in every week with our clients. We always ask them 2 questions. We always say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your experience? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us to somebody else, and what would you say? And what's really interesting from those 2 questions is you can get an awful lot of information, because everybody's got a very quick answer as to 9 out of 10, because I don't give 10 out of 10s, which is really irritating. But so I had a client who gave me 10 out of 10 on experience, but only 3 on referring me to other people, which I felt was really weird. But for her, it was because I didn't have a website, because I didn't actually have a website for the first year we were in business. So she didn't feel that she could refer me to other people, because there was nowhere to send them in terms of finding out more.
Okay.
It was obviously something we fixed very quickly. So we always go back on our feedback. So we're really quick in terms of response. We always tell them what we're doing as a result of their feedback, and we always just make them feel very, very involved and important, actually, to the growth of our business. And I send written thank you notes to all of my clients. They all get written Christmas cards, so I get RSI for about 3 days straight. They all get little random packages of love, of stuff that we've just seen that's particular to them. So I asked a client once if he could invite anyone to dinner, who would he invite? And he said Hitler, which I thought was really weird, because he's a Jew and he lost quite a lot of family during the Holocaust. So, but for him, he wanted to understand it from the Nazi perspective. So, which I thought was great. So I went away and I bought the book that was written by the guy that ran Auschwitz, the concentration camp. And I sent it to him with a post-it saying, couldn't get you dinner with Hitler, but hope this comes close. And he absolutely loved it. And it cost me £12.
Absolutely.
And it's those little wow moments. It's those are really just treating people as humans. And, I have clients that ring me up and they burst into tears when they walk through the door, and they become like family to me. It's not just about the work that we do for them and the budgets that they've got to spend. We absolutely become part and parcel of the fabric of their organisation, really. And I think the other thing, if I can carry on, I do have a tendency to chat today, is there's two things. One is Radical Candor, which is a fantastic book by Kim Scott, I think. But it's all about caring deeply and challenging directly. And I would say if you're really putting the customer at the heart of what you do, then that's the behaviours, that's the behaviour that you need to be creating. And it's also fundamentally understanding the anatomy of trust, which is a really good little TED. I don't think it's a TED talk, but it's definitely on YouTube by Brené Brown.
Okay.
And she talks about braving connection, and the word braving is an acronym for the different elements of what a trustful relationship actually looks like. And that's been fascinating for me, as I've developed over the sort of last 18 months with clients, because it means you can start, once you understand how that works, that authenticity and that trust, because they're buzzwords again that are used a lot, but when you start understanding them, you can have really interesting, deep conversations with people and say, when this happened, that's the bit of the trust that you broke down there, and actually we need to reestablish that in this way, or this is the reason I need that information, and blah 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 blah.
And
so
Sorry to I just before I forget, it's just on the book thing, because it's happened to me, and I've done it in the past as well. And it's those little things, but if you actually break it down and you think about it, if you're working with a company, a smaller company, so not a large global organization, and they're sending you things like that they clearly know you clearly know your clients, and who else is doing that for them? Who else is going to send them a book? Who else is going to send them a handwritten note? And it's just those little things that make a massive difference. If somebody in your family sent you that book because they knew you'd be interested in it, you'd be well chuffed.
Yeah.
So imagine what that would do if just a small company, if a small company did that. And just the second point is, I'm always so skeptical about saying the Hitler word for questions or answers to those types of questions. But my reason would be slightly different, because he terrible person, but he dominated a whole nation, and he was, they put him in that position. He made himself into that position, so he must have had some charisma and some power and authority to get to that stage. And it'd be so interesting to understand those techniques. Not for bad, but for good.
I'll tell you what. If you're genuine, because I love this stuff. I find it absolutely fascinating. So there's a really good book called Sacred Causes.
Okay.
Which you will probably love. You might find it in the post in a couple of weeks' time if I get your address. But it's quite a book stop. It's a doorstop. Sorry, it's a massive book. But it basically goes through Hitler. It goes through Mussolini. It goes through all of the bad guys of 20th century politics, and basically explains how they did it. And what tips and techniques, because obviously I did ancient rhetoric as my degrees, so how they used some of the tools from ancient rhetoric in modern politics. Fascinating. Wow. So definitely recommend that one if you like that cool. sort of stuff.
Yeah, all these things that you're saying, the links will be in the show notes. So.
The other thing is, you said it's only for small businesses, and I disagree with that. So we go all the way through from startups to really big businesses, and I find I don't treat them any different just because of their size. And actually what I find is the bigger companies and the people within the bigger companies actually appreciate it an awful lot more, because having been in a big company, BP employed 85,000 when I was there, you do sometimes just feel like a number, and you do feel that people might not appreciate you, and things get sort of stuck in sort of death.
Sorry. What I meant was you don't necessarily get that from a bigger company sending those things and those gifts. The personal gifts.
It's a missed trick.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll bleep all these bits out, actually, because we're giving away all these secrets, and it's not good.
Yeah, well, no. So we have actually got another book I'd recommend about this particular element, because it's something I'm so passionate about and I read all the time. Is Zappo's Delivering Happiness.
Oh, cool.
Which talks about exactly this, and he actually, putting customers at the heart of what we do. He put that at the absolute crux of his business strategy. He actually ended up moving his head office from one part of the world to another because he couldn't get the right people to answer the phone. That level of change within his business, and I find that quite inspirational, actually.
Cool.
So yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, excellent. Like I say, all those links to the books and everything will be in the show notes, so people can dive in as they want to. Just want to move it on to quite a short, snappy question, really, and that's quite simply, moves on from customers being at the heart of it, and why don't traditional sales funnels seem to work anymore? I think we've pretty much answered that question, but it'd just be interesting just to break it down a little bit further.
Yeah. I think because people don't like to know they're in a funnel.
Yeah.
I don't think people like being sold to in the way they used to. I think with social media, what we've actually done is democratized access to information and people. So people are doing a lot more research and doing a lot more in the consideration phase, if you like, before picking up the phone. And with social media as well, we're being bombarded with like 10,000 messages a day or something. And I think it just creates attention apathy. I think we just get overwhelmed. And there's a guy from the 70s who I can't remember his name. It'll come back to me in a minute. But he said that we're basically dealing with attention economics. So a wealth of information drives a poverty of attention. And when that happens, when you get that sense of, oh my God, I don't know what to do, I've just got so many people trying to talk to me and sell to me and all the rest of it, is actually you just go to your network. And you look for testimonials and you look for reviews, and you ask your mum or your friend down the golf club or whatever. And I think that's why it doesn't work anymore, because actually people are returning back to our bases. We're going back to our tribes to get the information we need and get them to filter it for us. And I think there's this whole sense of losing trust, and authenticity gets sort of thrown around. And if I tell you I'm nice and great, that's fine. But if someone else told you that I was nice and great, then you believe them a lot more than you believe me.
Yeah.
And I think we do it for everything, like Glassdoor for jobs. We do it TripAdvisor for food. That when I buy a washing machine, I'm checking it out online before I even go to the shop. If I bother at all, I might just buy it online. And so that's just the nature of marketing and sales now, I think, fundamentally.
Yeah, social proof's so important nowadays. It's just massive because everything's open and transparent, and rightly so, because there is literally no hiding anymore.
No. And to be honest, I always say to my clients, like, throw your testimonials and reviews everywhere. Don't just have them on a page. I put them on email signatures. I put them throughout all of my marketing material. It goes on every proposal I send out. It's literally every comment, because and the other thing is, it's really nice to marinate in that positivity. And actually, it's really, I've got a kudos file, I call it. So, when anyone says something nice to me, I stick it in a file. And then when I'm having a really bad day, I can go back and go, no, I am really good at my job. I've helped a lot of people. Like, people do like my articles. They might just not like this one. It's only got 12 likes so far. It's fine.
I think you're being a bit vain there, looking at the likes. People are watchers. You got to remember that.
And you know what? The amount of emails that I get, it's always the emails and the direct messages actually that I get from people who say, really appreciated you saying this. I've just got a question about it. And it ends up being all this stuff that just happens on, I call it the dark social media, because it always starts on like the public bit and then moves off quite quickly. I find it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. And we know that as well. That's why Instagram's killing likes now.
Yeah.
We won't have it soon, and I think it's probably for the best, because then people will check out content that's actually relevant and interesting rather than just spam.
Yeah, cool. One of the main reasons, if not the main reason, I wanted to get you on the podcast is to discuss this, which is the EMARI Code.
Yes.
Can you talk us through this? I've watched the short intro video, and the link again will be in the show notes. And it was just so so simple. It's going to be so many links in these show notes. It's shocking, but the EMARI Code was just so simple, and it just made so sense to me that I want everyone listening to know about it.
Yeah, so the EMARI Code is I always write the acronym ABBA at the top of every page that I write when I'm doing any form of marketing for any client. So an ABBA is awareness to buying, and then buying to brand ambassador. And what you find is, if you think of your traditional sales funnel, and you sort of flip it onto its side, that's kind of what you've got now, because that's the way marketing works. And with most marketing companies focus really on lead generation and awareness and that start of the journey, rather than focusing on the buyer and getting that, developing that relationship with the buyer and getting them to buy more and also refer you to other people. So awareness to buying, most of that happens through content. So you have to make sure you've got the right content, and most of that comes through getting feedback and answering frequently asked questions. And then when you have a buyer, you can't stop there. You can't think, right, I've got the sale back to the start again, like you would in the traditional sales funnel. You've got to think, okay, how can I help this buyer? How can I develop products and services that they need, and do other people need them as well? Because that will keep your research and development up to date. And then it's also, how can I make them a walking, talking advert? How can I wow them with the delivery and experience that they have when they come to EMARI? And how can I make them feel involved and important? Because if you make them feel like that and create that experience, then they'll start to look at your company like as a business that's created by people that care, and then they'll become walking, talking adverts for you. And actually, for me, the one thing that I look at, and the one thing I'm really proud of as EMARI, is all of our work comes through either social media or word of mouth. We do, and that's why, because of that EMARI code, and it all comes back to feedback. That's the lubricant that keeps the engine going.
I love it, and
stitch up.
and like I say, the links in the show notes to the video. Please check it out, because the what Em's talking about there, and the visual and all the links to it, it just makes perfect sense, and it'll just reiterate what Em was talking about there. And yeah, it just makes sense, and that's what we should all be focusing on, basically.
Yeah, thank you. And that's why it's the logo. That's the that's why we designed the logo the way we did.
It's like you've thought about these things. It's
almost like I'm in marketing.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is really interesting, because in a recent blog post, you mentioned that only 32% of B2B marketers have a documented content marketing strategy, which is a bit mad, really. Mm-hmm. But you also mentioned we should be following the 5 rules of content marketing. So it might be that's why only 32% of them aren't, because they don't know these 5 rules. So what are they?
So very briefly, it's don't be afraid to borrow ideas. So if you see something and you think that's really good, but I can do it better, do it better. So I always use the cake analogy. My grandma had a very good Victoria sponge recipe, and then I added some strawberries and some meringue hearts, and took a classic with a modern twist and made it better. So yeah, don't be afraid to borrow ideas is number 1. Remember that content is purposeful. It's not art. It's there to do something. It's supposed to provide useful information in a helpful and entertaining way. So instead of thinking, oh crap, I've got to put something on Facebook today, it's more about thinking, what's the message I need to present, and then what's the best channel for me to do that on, or best medium, I should say. Content number 3 is it was the best advice I ever got from my mentor at BP, Kirsty Bashforth, and she always said, be interested and then interesting. So that's really about, rather than just blitzing the world about how brilliant you are on social media, it's about going and finding conversations you can add value to, and joining a conversation and delivering value, as opposed to just talking about yourself all the time. And then that links in really nicely to number 4, which is no one cares about your business as much as you do, fundamentally. I think on the blog, there's this whole analogy about cake, and this is the bit I've got with Russell Crowe. But yeah, people are problem or gold led. They're not product or service driven. So if you spend 10 minutes telling me about how brilliant your product or service is, but actually you haven't asked me if I need it, I'm not going to be very interested. So asking more questions first, and then following up. Everybody says it, but that's where the magic is, and it's about following up with more specific and interesting content. And it's also, if there's a 6th rule, which I should probably add, it's allowing people to binge on your content. Like Netflix, I always say Netflix, doesn't just give you a series to watch. It recommends a ton of other series that you might like because you liked this one. And Amazon does the same with books, which is why my book bill is so large. But it's about letting people really binge on all the content that's relevant to them, and making that really accessible for them. And then following up with more specific content that will help them as well.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully that'll help the 68% of B2B marketers that...
I think it's more like 40% now since I wrote that blog. So I need to go back and update it, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, I should do a blog on how to do a content marketing strategy, maybe too.
I think that's your next one, because that's what people will be asking. That's great that you've given us these 5 to 6 tips, but can you just do it for me? Okay. You've spoken a lot already and provided so much value. So it's time to ask you if you're ready for some quick fire questions.
Go for it.
Brilliant. You've already kind of done this one, so hopefully there's another in the wings, but name one must-read business book.
Tribe of Mentors, Tim Ferriss.
Cool. What was the last thing you Googled?
My new business coach's website, because I wanted to see if he was any good.
That's always a good tip as well, really, isn't it? What is your most used app at the moment?
Vivino.
What's that?
So it's basically when you buy a bottle of wine, you snap the label and it gives you all the tasting notes and gives you all the reviews and how much people spend on it.
Wow, really that's good. Cool.
Yeah.
I
so
like
it's
that.
really useful when you're at posh dinners with people and you can go, oh yes, I can really smell the cherries and the notes of...
You know what? You can tell we're both marketers because that was my first thought. I was just about to say, it'll make you look like you're an absolute genius in wine circles.
Yeah, it's quite useful.
What would be a one tip for people who are studying at the moment?
One tip: work for 52 minutes and rest for 17.
Cool. If you can tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
Okay. So Anthony Hopkins recently did an interview on this about he's got a picture in his wallet of himself when he was 10, and he says to himself, "We did okay, kid. We did okay." And I'm going to steal that. I think it's brilliant.
Love it. And final question.
Yeah.
What is your favourite sea? Mediterranean, Caribbean, or Saw?
Seesaw. Easy.
Love it. Yeah, I kind of guessed you were going to go for that one.
I'm a child at heart.
Absolutely. Right, final question. If people want to find out more about EMARI or get in touch with yourself, as they blatantly should do, where should they go?
LinkedIn. Everything's on there. I pretty much live on there, and I'm much more popular on there than I am in real life, so I'd go there.
It's been so good to get you on, and absolutely amazing stuff that you've brought today. Thank you so much.
A pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks once again, Emma, for joining us. Absolute pleasure to have you on the Marketing Study Lab podcast. And I just want to highlight some of the amazing takeaways that I got personally from my chat with Emma. So this first one is that marketing just isn't important. It is the business. If you don't have sales, you don't have a business. And marketing drives and facilitates this. It is integral to what we do and how. Secondly, always be listening to your customer and appreciate the feedback, but also ask and act upon the responses. As Emma pointed out, if you get a 3-star rating, there's definitely room for improvement. Ask why only 3. It could be a simple issue, such as not having a website, social proof, transparency, or a missed call, all of which are easily fixed. But it could be there is some fundamental flaw with your business plan that needs to be fixed, and it needs your attention. So always be asking. And finally, here are Emma's top 6 tips for creating better content. 1, don't be afraid to borrow ideas, but make sure you give credit for them always, unless you're a bad person, really. 2, make your content purposeful. 3, be interested, then interesting. 4, no one cares about your business as much as you do. Please remember that. 5, follow up with specific and interesting content. And finally, 6, and this is hot off the EMARI press, create content worth binging on. And finally this week, just time for an old classic, the SWOT model, but more specifically, adding something to it that you may not have heard of, which is toes. Not the ones on your end of your feet. I know it's a terrible thing to say. Apologies, and it's the very last time you'll ever hear me say that slight pun when we're talking about this model. But we all know what a SWOT is. We look at internal strengths and weaknesses of a particular organisation, as well as looking at the opportunities and threats of the external environment. But how do we make sense out of these? to gather valuable, actionable insights? Well, we use this thing we call TOES. Now, TOES is a model that sits inside the SWOT analysis, and it brings together each component. Basically, what it allows you to do is focus on one opportunity, strength, threat, or weakness against another to create the best strategic response to what is actually occurring within your marketplace or your organization. So let's break this down by looking at each one individually. First of all, strength, opportunity. We utilize a strength to exploit an opportunity. This is probably the most obvious thing you could do, as it is your strength, and there is a potential within the market that is to be utilized. Moving on to weaknesses and opportunities. This is where we use opportunities against weaknesses. We can highlight where these weaknesses can be overcome, and thus taking advantage of any external opportunities. Mitigating weaknesses puts a company in a much stronger position. Strength and threat. Seems obvious to lean on your strengths, but analysing these against any potential threats means you can counteract any potential issues within your marketplace by utilising what you and your organisation does well. And finally, weaknesses and threats. Now, this is the one that people usually struggle with, and it's probably the hardest to get your head around. How the heck do you get strategic direction from a weakness and a threat? Well, this is more defensive than anything, but it's always worth considering. Take a look at your weaknesses and look to minimize these in order to reduce the potential threats that may be created within your marketplace. For example, and I think it's important we highlight an example here, you may find that a weakness is a lack of internal communication, and a threat is confusion about your new range of products within the marketplace. One strategy you may look to implement is creating an internal comms strategy that creates clarity over the product range, which can be then replicated into the marketplace. Ta-da! Threat and weakness negated. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.